You know, Roanoke Gaming has come out with a few videos that, quite simply put, I really did want to see. His Space Marine biology video was pretty much amazing. And now we have this. This is something that actually concerns me in more ways than one. SCP-439, the biology behind the bone hive infection. Oh man, this is gonna be a rich one. Guys, so basically SCP-439 is an SCP where you experience unending bone growth to the point where you're it's because of an insect. So we're going to get into this, and I'm going to regret watching this later because we've got a lot of bugs out here where I live right now, and quite honestly, we have the exterminator coming because it's gotten to the point where we're just like, raid isn't working anymore. They're becoming insistent. Some of them are trying to set up cults in the backyard, and that's not a good thing, okay? It's just not a good thing. War pugs. Check the links in the description below for all Roanoke Gaming's links. And let's jump right in. It's time to regret everything. And it's time for, if you have a problem with bugs, I apologize for the scratching that is soon to commence. Let's go.
As we are right on the cusp of Halloween and spooky scare skeletons have been mentioned in about the last 2 videos, let's wrap this up with a trinity and talk about another creature whose bones become warped and twisted as they succumb to a very real disease that plagues humanity right now. Fibrodysplasia ossification progressiva is a genetic variant of disease that will turn your muscle into bone over time, rendering you immobile and completely vulnerable. Those that display this genetic disorder will slowly lose their ability to breathe, and as their blood oxygen content dips through time, their body compensates somewhat by producing more red blood cells, but ultimately they will slip into a coma, which results into eventual game end. The creature that has been known to cause this is called SCP-439. SCP-439 is a form of insectoid, but its origins remain a mystery to the Foundation. It does not appear to have an actual relation to any known insect on Earth concerning what it does to animals, but it does resemble a Forficular auricularia, which is known as just a common earwig. And if you know anything about earwigs, these specifically will go into your ear and lay eggs in the ear.
Why am I watching this? There's ear
canal, as it is deemed acceptable warmth and moisture levels. And no, they do not burrow into your brain and eat out the back of your eyeballs. This is where the common earwig and SCP-439 split, however, because the biological changes induced by this Euclid class SCP should, in my personal opinion, be up to Keter class, but I suppose as long as a massive invasion is avoided by these insects, then they do not pose too much of a threat to humanity on a species level.
Kill it with fire.
But for an individual, they can be quite dangerous. SCP-439 is one that is deemed safe if you approach it under specific conditions and terms. They are kept within a sealed and locked 38-liter Type G containment unit with connected oxygen supply. They need oxygen, which would imply that these creatures did evolve on Earth, but perhaps due to where their human hosts would be found, their generalized presence has gone undetected. Typically, the specimen is fed through a feeding tube with an approved nutrient substance known as XF. When interacting with SCP-439, it is imperative that only personnel at level 2 or higher should be allowed to interact, as with all lower classes.
Wait a minute, hold on a second, dude. Is that your toe or is that your thumb?
Nutrient substance known as XF. When interacting with SCP-439,
because this looks like another digit. Is that your toe?
It is imperative that only personnel at level 2 or higher
Bro, whoever this is, they need to go see a doctor because they are an SCP.
Should be allowed to interact, as with all lower classes of personnel, they are not equipped nor trained to do so, which could lead to a containment breach. In terms of actual interaction with this creature, as mentioned previously, they're
no, get that thing off me.
Relatively safe for the most part. They're able to deliver a firm and painful pinch with their abdominal forceps, but your skin is more than a match for this creature. In most cases, the skin will not even be breached, and there are no known methods of infection that exist through the pincers themselves. The pincers seem to suggest, though, that they are either for a defensive measure or a carnivorous use. However, as we will discuss later, based upon what they eat and how they achieve it, the pincers are nothing more than defensive appendages or leftover evolutionary traits before their interactions with humans. Speaking of humans, humans, SCP-439 has shown no interest in other animals of any form.
Of
Despite
course.
being presented with many different species, it will reject all of them in favor of their desire to infect Homo sapiens. In fact, the creature seemingly understands human movements and intentions to some degree in the infection process. When coming into contact with a human, SCP-439 will quickly hide itself away from sight and begin waiting. The actual danger this creature poses to people is its habitat construction and reproduction. The danger is displayed when a person falls asleep. SCP-439 is able to determine the movement of their victim as they enter a stage of sleep that has been expunged from the reports. However, being a scientist myself, presumably this would be REM sleep, also known as REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. The body is immobilized due to the brainstem being affected by brain chemicals, essentially the reason you typically do not act out dreams, and also horrifying.
Also, sleep paralysis demons. I'm just saying, sleep paralysis demons. If you ever wonder where the sleep paralysis demon comes from, it's here.
Why you sometimes wake up in a state of paralysis to see a demon in your room, and I can speak on personal experience, that is always a blast and a half. Regardless, SCP-439
No, it's not. Negative.
will use this point when you are completely paralyzed by natural processes to begin an invasion of your body. It will sneak through your mouth and work its way down your oropharynx, and ultimately it will reach your larynx, where it will push aside the epiglottis and move into your trachea. At this point, there is no getting rid of this creature apart from surgical or invasive intervention. The creature will move fully into the victim's lungs, and this will be the resting point for the queen for now. At first, roughly 4 to 8 hours after awakening, the victim will report chest pains, shortness of breath, and abdominal cramping. Another symptom to note is fever will begin to take place and also rise at a rapid rate. The body's immune system will be activated to attack whatever has entered the lungs. The macrophages would be the first to arrive on the scene, as they are usually tasked with keeping mold spores from growing within our lung tissue. The hard exoskeleton of this creature would mean that the cells are virtually powerless to actually take out this invader. In response, the body would begin raising the body temperature, and due to the physical presence of SCP-439, a pulmonary edema would quickly start to fill up the alveolar sacs within the lung. This would inhibit breathing to a large degree and account for chest tightness. The abdominal cramping would be the actual physical breathing as it began to wear out the old meat suit. When your diaphragm contracts, if pressure changes specifically from an edema forming in the lungs, this can lead to cramps and difficulty when breathing. Eventually, as time passes, the victim will be completely incapacitated due to an increase in body temperature and physical stressors. At this point, the immune system not having time to activate the adaptive immune system, but with SCP-439 overcoming the innate immune system, the body will begin to change to the detriment of the infected. In the first 3 days of infection without treatment, which again seemingly can be fixed by surgery, the host will start becoming withdrawn from others, and their ability to move will become worse and worse until ultimately they are rendered immobile. Prior to this happening, however, they will seek out sheltered, darkened locations that are enclosed by natural compulsion. They will find a suitable location by influence of SCP-439 and stay immobilized in that spot. With the last bit of movement ceased, the host is still very much alive, but a new symptom of the disease begins kicking into overdrive. This new stage, as mentioned in the intro, is the most aggressive, painful, and altering to the human form. It is known as fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, or FOP for short, because that name is a mouthful and a half. FOP typically has its roots in the genes of a person and is a genetic disorder. Currently, there is no known cure for the disease except for perhaps the usage of CRISPR, which I talk about on my second channel, so go see that at the end of this video. But for now, you know we have to talk about the FOP, because to understand why SCP-439 is so dangerous, we need to know what exactly it does. When the body undergoes a flare-up of FOP, it has been found that the bone cells are circulating throughout the blood and circulatory system of a person. Typically, this is not the case within a normal, healthy person, as there would be no reason why this would be necessary.
The people that write SCP, sometimes I'm just like, why would you do this to my mental sanity? You know? Bring me cool, scary monster, bring me all this other kind of stuff. Don't give me this crap. Don't.
By weak bonds or an issue with the osteoclast, the bone cells will move through different areas of the body and wind up in connective tissue such as tendons, ligaments, and muscle. As these bone cells take up residence in this tissue, this leads to bone formation within these areas it was never designed to be in. One of the more alarming aspects is it seems to favor tissue within the trunk and abdominal area of a person. Your intercostal muscles help you breathe, and as time passes, these are turned to bone. Your ribs form more bone, and it reaches a point where your chest can no longer expand nor contract due to this bone formation. The process is said to be exceedingly painful and anxiety-inducing during times of flare-ups. Ultimately, it is more—
I don't have a doubt as to why it would be exceedingly painful and panic attack inducing, because I swear to God that would be a horror show and a half.
More than just your intercostal muscles, but also your latissimus dorsi, erector muscles, neck muscles, tendons, and arms. Everything turns to bone, freezing you in place. Eventually, your jaw will also begin forming more bone, so that will ultimately result in your mouth freezing in place as well.
It looks seriously like it has been dipped in candle wax.
Well, overall, this disease is incredibly dangerous for those that have it and will quickly reduce quality of life at different rates for different people. In your regular human form, the process is horrifying enough, but it gets even worse when a person is infected with SCP-439. The same process will take place with some marked differences. Seemingly, bone cells will begin circulating the body. However, even with this being the case, the person's muscle, before completely succumbing to the bone transformation, will move this person to a secluded area where it will inspire them to assume the fetal position. This position will bring the legs up to the chest and the chest to curl in. This also has the added benefit of protecting the internal organs of this person. At this point, the transformation will continue as the bone breaches the skin of this person and connects with the bone in different areas. This will render them in a spherical shape, and due to the tightness of the fetal position,
I don't want to know. I don't want to know in any way, shape, or form. I never want to know where this picture came from, why it looks like this, why it was taken, and the animal that made it. I don't want to know any of these things.
they'll be roughly about 3/4 their original size. And this is where the term bone hive comes from. Before moving any further though, let's discuss how SCP-439 might biologically override a human's normal functional meat suit to become this bone hive. With SCP-439 inside of the lungs, as mentioned, this would inspire an immune response, but that wouldn't actually explain much past that, apart from the fever, that is. While in the lungs, it would need to begin releasing some sort of chemical into the surrounding tissue to actually alter the body's normal functioning operating status. Why do I assume it to be chemical? Because clearly this creature doesn't really have access to our nervous system or our genetic makeup. One hormone that may be released by SCP-439 would be either melatonin or some form of sedative that would cause a person to seek out shelter and darkness. As mentioned, 439 does inspire this action in those that it infects. So using the bloodstream of a person and making their brain think it's time to head into a darker area would be a way for this to be successful. Although this chemical would need to not make a person so tired that they actually entered actual sleep, as they would still need to be somewhat mobile. Another chemical that would need to be activated is the parathyroid hormone, as well as calcitonin. Calcitonin would be released into the body, and this has the ability to reduce the calcium levels in the blood by typically stimulating osteoblasts to place calcium within the bone. This working in...
Why do you know all this? Why? Like, you're going to scientifically explain, like, I understand the title is Biology Behind the Bone Hive Infestation, but this is actually kind of freaking me out a little bit, okay? I'm just saying.
In conjunction with parathyroid hormones, or PTH, being released would simultaneously stimulate the osteoclast. With the osteoclast and blast working together in roughly the same area, this would have an effect of releasing bone cells and putting them into the bloodstream. When this happens, the osteoblast would continue their work, and upon finding bone cells within the tissue it's not normally present in, could in theory begin building bone there at that site. When these factors, along with more than likely several others, come together, this would inspire bone movement into the connective tissues and growth of this new bone. The bone growth would continue in this person until they have become a semi-spherical shape. When the body reaches this point in the transformation, it is complete and surgical intervention will do nothing. The queen that caused all of these physical changes will now roughly produce 20,000 to 30,000 offspring. Inside of the hive, workers, drones, and warriors, like any other hive hierarchy, will exist and interact in the same way as does any other hive. But as with most hive-like colonies, the queen is the only one actually capable of reproduction. This would...
It's like aliens on a microscopic scale.
Explain why this particular SCP is not Keter class, but instead is Euclid, because with the only one of these creatures reproducing, being the queen, they only possess a threat to the individual rather than an extinction level event. So the human body at this point, you would expect, would be completely inoperative and really just there for the bone structure. But you may be surprised to know that the human is still there. Internally, the organs are still intact. Some have been eaten away, but the organs concerning the digestive tract are still very much so functional. The host will survive for roughly 4 to 6 months after this infection, and biological activity is still taking place within them. An experiment was conducted on a person who was turned into the spherical hive before the eyes were eaten away by the insects. Upon opening the eyelids of the person, it was found that the eyes would follow the light and react to it, which means neurologically the person was still in there and their brain was intact and able to process information. But the person is quite literally stuck inside their own bodies while the hive crawls around inside them.
No, I didn't need to hear that. Things that make you go blah.
permanent, however. Shortly after getting to the eyes of the person, certain areas of the brain are hollowed out and eaten. This would result in a marked drop in cognition and consciousness until ultimately the person inside is completely gone. More than likely, this would happen when the frontal lobe was hollowed out. Interestingly, certain portions of the brain are left intact. More than likely, the brainstem, which regulates a large portion of our unconscious processes. This allows the body to continue living despite the person they once were being checked out. The relationship between a human and SCP-439 is, by all accounts, somewhat symbiotic. And I had issues with this idea in the Last of Us video I brought up about the cordyceps keeping the body alive, but by definition, this is symbiotic because both the body and the aggressor, I guess you could say, are benefiting from the relationship. It's just not your brain that's benefiting from the relationship. The hive will actually use the digestive tract of a person to process organic material. Presumably, at some point in the small intestine, a hole is made that will feed the colony a nutritive paste. This paste also continues to pass through the small intestine, allowing the host to benefit from the organic material breakdown, providing the body with glucose. So in the end, this keeps the host alive and the colony in the land of the living. But much like the brain staying intact, this is not a permanent arrangement. As mentioned, 4 to 6 months later, a new queen will emerge within the ranks and choose a drone to mate with. At this point, the colony will cease to be and destroy itself by rupturing through the person. This will not game in them, believe it or not, but we will get to that momentarily. The majority of the hive at this point will essentially game end off concerning the workers. The warriors will abandon the site and wander away, but due to lack of ability to turn humans in the capacity that the queen has done, this would render them within 1 generation of their lifespan completely gone. The only way that they won't completely go away is if the nutritive slurry given to them at the Foundation is administered to continue their life. The queen will venture out after becoming fertilized and search for a new hive. The original hive, or person if you can call them that, will continue living for some time despite the trauma to their body that they have endured. However, without the hive feeding them the organic elements via esophagus, they will slowly succumb to starvation and biological activity will cease. So remember to always keep an eye out for earwigs, because if you don't, you're gonna end up as a bony sphere. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed my video. I know it sounded a little weird. I'm just getting over a cold, which seems to be a pretty common occurrence nowadays. If you did, leaving a like helps, and subbing is a great way to stay up on date when I post. I'll drop my Twitter, Patreon, Discord merch, and link to my second channel, which I've got my first episode covering CRISPR up, so go check that out. And speaking of Patreon, I would like to thank a few of mine. Huge shout out to It's Not a Spoon and Laffy No Skill. I also want to thank Freedom Units 44, Skilt, and the Lone Titan. And to the rest of my patrons, I thank you as well. Being a patron really helps out and keeps everything running on this channel. Anyhow, thanks.
Why did I do that to myself? I don't like bugs. I don't like bugs. Roanoke. Why? Why was this recommended to me? War pugs. I got a list of things that I don't ever want to have to deal with. Being crawled on by bugs is just no thank you. No thank you. I do not want to be crawled on by pugs. I want to be crawled on by pugs. That's fine with me. That's fine with me, war pugs. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm finished with this. Oh god, that SCP is nasty to begin with. But then to hear about what this thing would actually do. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, because frankly, I don't think I need this ever under any circumstance. I shouldn't have watched I shouldn't have observed the SCP file to begin with, and now I have this, and this is now on my brain. I'm heading out. War Pugs, I will catch you guys next time. Subscribe to Roanoke Gaming. Subscribe to me. Leave a like, comment. Join as a member of Patreon for early access. I'm going to go get a can of Raid.